Why are flights between Africa and South America so rare? Every day, approximately 100,000 flights traverse the globe, connecting nearly every corner of the world. From bustling cities in Asia to remote islands in the Pacific, air travel has made the planet feel smaller and more accessible. Yet one region stands out as an exception: the South Atlantic, where direct flights between Africa and South America are surprisingly scarce. Despite the proximity of these two continents and their combined population of nearly 2 billion people, about a quarter of the global total, air routes across this stretch of ocean remain limited. Why is this the case? To uncover the reasons, we must explore a mix of geography, history, economics, and modern-day realities. The geography of the South Atlantic. At first glance, the lack of flights between Africa and South America seems puzzling, especially when considering their geographical proximity. The closest points between the two continents are remarkably near. For instance, Natal, a Brazilian city with a population of around 1.5 million, is only about 2,900 kilometers from Freetown, the capital of Sierra Leone, which also has a population of roughly 1.5 million. This distance is modest compared to other major transcontinental routes. For example, the heavily trafficked route between New York City and London spans over 5,500 kilometers, yet carries millions of passengers annually. Clearly, physical distance alone cannot explain the scarcity of flights across the South Atlantic. Another geographical consideration is the availability of emergency landing sites, a critical factor for commercial aviation. Passenger jets with two engines must remain within 60 minutes of an airport in case of an emergency, such as engine failure. The South Atlantic presents a challenge in this regard, as it is one of the most sparsely populated oceanic regions in terms of infrastructure. Only 3 locations offer potential runways for emergency landings. St. Helena. This remote island, located about 2,000 kilometers off the coasts of Angola and Namibia, is reachable in roughly 2 hours at an average jet speed of 900 km/h. This leaves a narrow window where a plane might be outside the 60-minute range, posing a logistical challenge, but not an insurmountable one. Ascension Island. Situated 1,300 kilometers northwest of St. Helena, this island hosts a military airstrip operated by British and American forces. While primarily a military facility, it has served as an emergency landing site for civilian flights, as seen in a 2013 Delta Airlines incident. Fernando de Noronha. This Brazilian island, a popular tourist destination, lies just 350 kilometers off Brazil's coast, making it a viable option for emergency landings on the South American side. While the limited number of emergency landing sites is a factor, it's not the primary barrier. Larger aircraft with 4 engines, such as certain long-haul jets, are not bound by the same 60-minute rule, and historical flights across the South Atlantic demonstrate that these logistical hurdles are not prohibitive. So, if geography isn't the main issue, what else could be at play? A historical perspective on South Atlantic air travel. To understand the current state of air travel between Africa and South America, we must look to the past. The history of trans-South Atlantic flights dates back to the early 20th century. In 1922, a Portuguese crew completed the first transcontinental flight across the South Atlantic, flying from Lisbon to Rio de Janeiro in multiple stages. 5 years later, in 1927, a French crew achieved the first non-stop flight from Senegal to Brazil. During this era, the South Atlantic was considered a more favorable route than the North Atlantic, where turbulent weather and strong jet streams posed significant challenges for early aircraft. Throughout the 1930s, regular flights connected Africa and South America, operated primarily by French, Italian, and German companies. Notably, the hydrogen-powered Graf Zeppelin airship made routine trips between Frankfurt, Germany, and Rio de Janeiro from 1931 to 1937. However, these early connections did not persist into the modern era. Why did this promising start fade? The answer lies in the historical and political context of the time. During the early 20th century, much of Africa was under European colonial rule, while South America, though largely independent by the 1800s, still had ties to European powers. Suriname, for instance, remained a Dutch colony until 1975. Flights from Africa were predominantly directed toward Europe, serving colonial administrators and facilitating the transport of resources and wealth. There was little demand for direct travel between Africa's colonial territories and South America's newly independent nations, which lacked strong economic or cultural ties. This historical precedent set the stage for the limited connectivity we see today. Population and economic realities. Africa and South America together account for roughly 25% of the world's population, with Africa's 1.5 billion people and South America's 450 million. However, raw population numbers don't tell the whole story when it comes to air travel. Population density and economic capacity play far more significant roles. Africa spans over 30 million square kilometers, a vast continent that could encompass the United States 3 times over. Large portions, such as the Sahara Desert and Congo rainforest, are sparsely populated, leaving population centers concentrated in specific areas like South Africa and Ethiopia. South Africa, with 64 million people, is a key player in African aviation. Its major cities, Johannesburg and Cape Town, serve as hubs for some of the few direct flights to South America, connecting to São Paulo, Brazil. Similarly, Ethiopia, with a population of 130 million, supports a rare transcontinental route from Addis Ababa to São Paulo, with onward connections to Buenos Aires, Argentina. Other flights link Brazil with Angola and Cabo Verde, driven by shared linguistic and cultural ties as former Portuguese colonies. On the South American side, Brazil dominates the transatlantic flight landscape. With over 210 million people, nearly half of South America's population, Brazil is the primary destination for these routes. The Buenos Aires flight is an exception, but the majority of South Atlantic flights originate or terminate in Brazil due to its population size and economic influence. Despite these connections, the overall number of flights remains low. The critical factor here is economics. Air travel, particularly international flights, is a luxury that depends heavily on economic demand. Wealthier regions like North America and Europe, with combined GDPs approaching $30 trillion each, support an extraordinary volume of air travel, around 2,000 daily flights across the North Atlantic, linking countless cities. In contrast, South America's GDP is approximately $4.3 trillion, and Africa's is less than $3 trillion. Together, these continents account for only a fraction of the economic output of their northern counterparts, despite their larger combined population. The economies of North America and Europe are built on specialized industries, finance, technology, pharmaceuticals, and entertainment that foster frequent business travel and diplomacy. These regions are deeply interconnected, driving demand for air routes. In contrast, the economies of Africa and South America are less integrated, with fewer industries requiring regular transcontinental travel. International tourism, another driver of air travel, is also limited by economic constraints in these regions, where disposable income for such luxuries is less common. The role of immigration in cultural ties. Immigration patterns further explain the disparity in flight connectivity. People often migrate to regions offering greater economic opportunities. For many in Africa, this means moving to Europe, where industries like engineering and technology are more developed. Similarly, South Americans seeking better prospects often relocate to North America. However, there is little economic incentive for migration between Africa and South America, as neither region offers the same level of wealth or job opportunities as Europe or North America. This lack of immigration demand reduces the need for direct flights between the two continents. Cultural and linguistic ties also influence travel patterns. The flights between Brazil, Angola, and Cabo Verde are bolstered by their shared Portuguese heritage, which fosters business, family, and cultural exchanges. Similarly, the Addis, Ababa, Sao Paulo, Buenos Aires route reflects Ethiopia's growing economic presence and Brazil's role as a regional hub. However, these connections are exceptions rather than the rule, as most African and South American countries lack the historical or cultural links that drive air travel elsewhere. The future of South Atlantic air travel. Will the South Atlantic ever see a surge in flights? The answer likely depends on economic growth. There is a direct correlation between a region's economic development and its flight frequency. Africa, in particular, is experiencing rapid economic expansion, with 11 of the world's 20 fastest growing economies located on the continent. As these economies develop, disposable income and business travel needs are likely to increase, potentially driving demand for more flights to South America. South America, too, is poised for growth, with Brazil and Argentina emerging as key players in global markets. As trade, tourism, and cultural exchanges between the two continents grow, airlines may find it economically viable to introduce new routes. For instance, cities like Lagos, Nigeria, or Nairobi, Kenya, could become future hubs for transatlantic flights if their economies continue to expand. Technological advancements in aviation could also play a role. Newer aircraft with greater fuel efficiency and longer ranges could make South Atlantic routes more feasible, reducing reliance on emergency landing sites. Additionally, as global awareness of Africa and South America's economic potential grows, business and diplomatic ties may strengthen, further encouraging air travel. The scarcity of flights across the South Atlantic is not primarily due to geography or logistics, but rather to historical, economic, and social factors. While the continents are physically close and home to a significant portion of the world's population, their limited economic integration, historical colonial ties to Europe, and differing immigration patterns have kept air travel to a minimum. However, as Africa and South America continue to develop economically, the demand for connectivity is likely to grow. The South Atlantic may one day see a network of flights rivaling that of the North Atlantic, driven by the same economic forces that make the world go round. For now, the gap in air travel serves as a reminder that in aviation, economics often dictates where planes fly.